Yeah, so we're here
Here we are.
at Greenwood.
Yeah.
We're so excited. I'm a big fan of your brewery. Ever since you guys opened, I've really enjoyed your beer. So we're very excited to be here. You submitted four beers to the awards.
Yep.
So we'll find out next week
Yay.
how you did, and then you guys are going to be at the festival on the 22nd. So I'm very excited.
Yeah. Megan Greenwood, our guest here, founder of Greenwood Brewing, downtown Phoenix. Is this downtown? Would you consider downtown?
Oh, heck
Roosevelt
yeah.
Road? Yeah.
Yep.
I know. I mean, the traffic would dictate it's downtown, right? Driving in here. So on a Friday.
Oh, yeah, that's tough. It's Friday afternoon. I didn't think about that.
It's all right, but because we love coming down to downtown and enjoying good beers, and Greenwood offers that. So
Did you guys open before or after Wilderness?
Wait, after.
After.
But we were all in construction all at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's start there with Megan here. We're in the brewery room here if you're watching on YouTube. There's a tap room building just next to it. You had quite a story of construction, and it kind of got delayed, and your opening and all that delayed through all COVID, but you ended up opening, and now you're thriving, right?
Yeah, thanks. I actually started Greenwood in 2017. So I was working, I'm an engineer. I was working in manufacturing and for about 10 years before I started Greenwood, and was a home brewer. And so when I was, I moved to Arizona I'm originally from the Midwest, and I moved to Arizona, and I wanted to buy a house because at the time it was 2011. It was like post-recession. I thought it was a good investment, and I became like totally house poor and ended up with looking for a roommate. And my roommate turned out to be one of my really good friends. And one year for my birthday, he got me a brewery kit and was like, I really think you'd enjoy brewing. And so like the next weekend I started brewing. And it was actually a Belgian Tripel.
Is that the one I have here? It's called First Love. Is that?
Yeah, it's a rendition of that.
Okay.
Yeah. We it's in the same family, I should say, as that. And we finished the first batch. I finished the first batch and drank it. And it was 11% alcohol, and put like I had like rosy cheeks after I drank the first beer, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is delicious. And we made it, I made it in my kitchen, and it was so cool. And it was like this product that I created from nothing. I absolutely loved that feeling. And so fast forward about a year later, I had a full built-out microbrewery in my garage that we brewed a barrel of beer every time we brewed, and I had 8 beers on tap, or it was a 4-head Keezy or Keezer, and we would rotate through 8 beers in that. And so we were very popular back then because we had a lot of friends.
Had a lot of friends, yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot of parties. My roommate was a chef, so he would make this delicious food, and we'd have all this delicious beer. And so I just fell in love with brewing and really loved just making this really cool product. And at the time I was making other products in my corporate life. So I was building electrical equipment at that time in Chandler, but I've made Herbal Essences shampoo, Whirlpool refrigerators, John Deere small square balers. If anybody's a farmer, you know what I'm talking about. So,
that's the Midwest cycle, by the way.
Yeah.
If you do all of those.
Where in the Midwest people?
Yeah.
From Iowa.
Okay.
And so all of these were made right in Iowa. All that was manufactured in Iowa. So then when I moved, I loved making things, whatever that may be. And then it was really, really exciting to make a beer that was fun and made people happy.
You have me like so amped up because I just got my first set of homebrewing equipment like last week, and obviously too busy to do anything right now because we're putting that beer festival together next week. But I'm hoping in the next month. I think I want to do a winter flavors saison, like something wintry, but a saison. and this is something that you might be able to give me some advice on, because I'm having my first child in December, and so I want to have a beer ready for when she's born. And then you just finished up your leave, right?
Yeah.
Your maternity leave.
Congrats, you
So
have
congratulations.
a 1 month old now, right?
Thank you. Yes, he's 1 month.
How is he? We'll let you get a minute here to brag about him. What do you want to say
Is he
about him?
drinking beer yet? No, I'm
I
just
know. Yeah, he's let me. I've drank a couple beers since he's been born, which was really exciting. You know, having a full glass versus just having little samples here and there. No, he's a great baby, really sweet. He's 4 weeks old, so we're still in the no sleep stage.
Yeah.
Still figuring things
You have
out.
advice for Johan here when he has one?
I don't think there's any advice I can give you.
It's really not. They don't come out with instructions.
It's amazing how, that's what I just keep hearing.
There's
It's
nothing
like,
you can do to prepare, I don't think. Except for have beer in the fridge, just
Ooh,
for,
that's good advice.
for later.
Sage.
So I'm hoping that I'll have a good 5 gallons of beer just ready to go.
There you go.
That's great. You should have it bottled and ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Not just in the carboy, but all the way done, so that you don't have to worry about it at all.
That's the plan.
Will there be a beer named for the little guy here pretty soon?
Oh, maybe. That's a good. When we named our hazy IPA Emera.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time I didn't know I wasn't pregnant, but I was like, wow, that's a really good baby name. I'm mad that we used that for this beer, because I was like, well, I guess I could name a girl baby after our beer name. Who knows? You never know. So
don't steal that one, Johan.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
That's hers.
All right. Done.
Are you having a girl?
We are.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
Yes.
So one of the things that I kind of wanted to know a little bit more about, because you were talking about the whole, and it's been well reported, the history of like 2020, and when you were trying to open down here, it's well known that you guys were trying to open in like February, kept getting pushed back into opening in July of that summer. Thinking about it now, 2 years later, how do you reflect on that, knowing how chaotic it was or uncertain it was? Are you able to reflect on that and just takeaways from that whole time?
Yeah, it's funny. I remember at the time, so we started construction in 2018. So I started Greenwood in 2017, but I was brewing on the west side. I was brewing at Freak.
It was on this building. It was all the construction.
Construction started in 2018 on this building. Yeah. So I was actually renting space. I say that for people who aren't beer people, but I was actually acting as a DBA under Freakin' Brewing Company, because in the state of Arizona, you have to have a fully built out microbrewery before you can get a microbrewer's license.
Oh, the old Freakin' up in Peoria, right? Oh,
yeah. And so I had gone and just knocked on doors in 2017 asking if anybody would let me brew on their system, and figuring out how to do that then and brew Greenwood beer on their system. The only way to do that was to operate it as a DBA under their license. So they took all the risk. And I was so lucky to find them. And I actually was connected through their taproom person. But it was great. They were looking for somebody to fill their fermenters at the same time as I was looking to fill somebody's fermenter. So we ended up, in 2018 then is when I was looking for a space. I was talking to banks because I wanted to self-fund the whole project. And I was talking to banks at the beginning before I had started even producing a product. And I remember this woman being like, oh, that's adorable. You want to start a brewery. You are this engineer who has never worked in a brewery before. You want to borrow $1 million.
Bless her heart.
Yes, bless your heart. Yeah.
Oh, no.
And that's kind of what I heard from all banks at that time. She said, you have to have a proof of concept before anybody's going to take you seriously. And so that's when I ended up working with Freakin'. And I started selling my products into... Then I started selling Greenwood Brewing into restaurants and bars throughout Arizona without even having the brewery. But then the way that it worked then was when I went out, because I had been selling my product, when I went out to get a loan, I was then seen as an expansion instead of a startup, because I had been in business selling into the market for a certain amount of time. So for a year it was. And so
does that mean they took you a little less serious, or
more serious then?
Oh, okay.
When it was seen as an expansion.
Yeah, okay.
So even though at the time, I think my first year I had like $20,000 in top line gross sales, you know, and even with that, they still saw it as an expansion. So I could get an SBA loan through a bank that, and they didn't see me as a startup, so it wasn't high risk.
That's awesome.
So that's how I ended up getting this loan, my loan, to start this project. So I found this location. I was living 5 minutes away from here at Skyline Lofts, just a 5-minute walk. And I'd walk up Fifth Street with my roommate and I'd be like, I want to start a brewery right here. This is where I want to start a brewery. And at the time I still was working a full-time job too.
And there was no breweries on Roosevelt.
No breweries on Roosevelt.
What was this? Was it just empty lot?
This was a vacant parcel.
Okay.
Yeah. Empty lot. And so I'd walk up Fish Street, but all Fish Street is Craftsman style houses. So there was really nowhere to build there, like have a brewery. You couldn't fit a brewery in that. And I ended up, so one of my customers was Changing Hands Bookstore. They have a bar called First Draft Book Bar in the bar. And my only beer, which I'm drinking right now, was the Her Story, was a Her Story Pale Ale. That was the only beer I had. So I was one of one employees, was brewing, selling, delivering, doing all the business work, kegging, cellar work, everything. And then I had one beer available. So when I'd go to restaurants and ask them, and I'd be like, hey, I'm Megan from Greenwood Brewing, and I'd like to sell my product, and can I introduce you to Greenwood and sell and show you my beer? And they're like, yeah, bring your whole lineup. Or no, they would actually say, no, we're full first. Like they'd be like, no, we're good, thank you. And I'd be like, well, I'm a woman-owned brewing company. All my brewers are women. And it was like one of one. And
you weren't lying, though, right?
I wasn't lying.
Yeah.
You should have been in marketing.
Yeah. Right. And then they'd be like, yeah, bring your portfolio. I was like, great, here it is, one of one, my one beer that is available. But the Her Story at First Draft was perfect for them because it was a bookstore, so Her Story. And the owner her name's Cindy Dash, one of the owners, and she was like, Megan, I have this property on Fifth Street in Roosevelt, and I really want to turn it into a beer garden. And I was like, oh my God, I want to build downtown on Fifth Street. And it was like harmony, like a match made in heaven. And so,
how about that?
So random.
She had this parcel, huh?
She had this parcel available.
Cool story.
So she was like, let's talk about it. Let's talk about what could happen. And so fast forward, we ended up with this design where we renovated the tap room. That was iLounge Art Gallery, which just then now is still on our property. It's just in the other building. And then Ben's Bells was a nonprofit that just moved down the street on Roosevelt. And so we renovated that. And then this was a new build. This whole building is brand new, built around the brewery.
Yeah.
And so we started the whole process started in the middle of 2018. And by the time, so we started construction, we started drawings at the end of 2018. It took us an entire year to get through the city of Phoenix. We started construction at the end of 2019. And with the intention of opening in March, with the intention of opening in February, and then we were going to open in March, was going to make our grand opening.
Right.
And so at the time, obviously, like you think back about it, and you heard about this COVID thing, but nobody was taking it seriously. And then somebody in our team got COVID. And I remember the day that we found out, it was like our whole construction team. So like somebody got COVID, and we were all standing in the brewery, like trying to figure out how to get the equipment in. And the equipment was coming that day, and we shut down the entire site and the only people who could be here were like the rigging company that was actually putting the equipment in. Everybody else had to leave. So we were installing the most important part of this entire project, and the whole site had to shut down.
Oh man.
And I just remember walking through my neighborhood, and I was like, when all this was happening, and you expect challenges when you're building, and you expect challenges of it was really difficult. The construction side, construction was hard. It was stressful. It was just high stress. Everybody was high stress.
Absolutely.
And most people will tell you that in a construction project. And so you're expecting that, but you're not expecting to be mandatory shutdown or to not know if you're going to be able to continue financially. And I remember walking, and I was like, what do we do? At that point, the mandatory shutdowns had started. And it was like, do I stop? Do you just stop and put it all on the back burner and just push hold on the whole, your whole
dream? Yeah, the dream, right? Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? No. But it's depressing at the time, because you're like, we put so much effort into this.
The hardest thing about that whole time period is the uncertainty.
Yeah.
It's not knowing what, half of us were thinking the zombie apocalypse was around the corner. So you don't usually have I can't even imagine what starting a business at that time was like.
Yeah. Well, and luckily, so in hindsight, we were supposed to open in February, like you said, Matt. And when we were getting ready to open the tap room interior design, I didn't like it. And I wasn't super excited about what was happening. And it was the end of January that this was happening. And I was like, I just don't know if this is what I want. I'm not really excited about this. I was walking through with one of my colleagues, and she was like, you need to love it. You need to love your tap room. And I was like, you're right. So I pushed pause on construction for 2 weeks. And I was like, and I ate the cost. I had to actually pay for construction people to still be on our payroll or whatever.
Right.
And I was like, no, we need to stop. And we ended up hiring an interior design firm called Mackenzie Collier Interiors. And she designed our interior space for the tap room, and so that I would love it. So that 2 weeks actually pushed us into March. And so instead of opening in February, having all of our people, all of our staff, everything going, all of our lease payments, everything, it didn't actually start because the shutdowns happened before we opened, which was, in hindsight, a blessing in disguise. At the time, I was like, I can't believe we're not opening in February. We're going to miss one of the biggest sales months of the whole year. And then because of that, I didn't have a whole taproom staff. So, which was great. So I didn't have to lay people off, which would have really, I did have one person employed at the time. And so that was something that at least we were at that stage where I didn't have to let everybody go that we had just hired. But going back to what I was thinking before was ultimately the decision was putting one foot in front of the other. You can't. Nobody knew what was going to happen. Nobody could predict, and so it was just all I can do is just keep moving forward with the plan as we can, and then we'll just see what comes and what happens.
Yeah.
And now here we are. And it's fantastic.
Yeah.
So that's amazing.
Yeah,
What a cool story.
of dogged persistence.
Yeah.
And
the name of the beer is even more, I think, appropriate now, because there's an even bigger story behind it now too.
Yeah, true. And I actually love this beer. It's one of my favorite beers. But we ended up opening in July, which was also, even then, it was controversial. But by that point, people don't realize that I a very large loan on this whole project. You know, we built this building together, the landowners and myself. So
were there still, I can't remember, were there still like restrictions on indoor dining and all that? But yeah.
You had to have food.
Oh, sure.
So, which was a whole nother ball game. And then everyone had to be seated outside.
Yeah.
In the middle of July in Arizona.
I don't understand the problem.
Yeah. But luckily, we
and that was like the hottest summer too on record. It was miserable that summer.
It was so hot.
Yeah.
But our beer garden was full all the time, you know, and we had a community that just supported us. But honestly, so our lease payments were due, my loan payments were due, like everything was starting. And I had my head brewer that was ready to go. We had Kristen. I had Lisa, our head of sales, was already we had these people that were ready to start, and actually we're already on payroll. And all of that was coming out of, you know, my checking account,
right,
you know,
right.
That, and people don't know that about business ownership, is like, if you don't have sales, that comes from you,
exactly.
You know? And so,
and there was nothing coming into that checking account.
No,
imagine, right?
There was nothing.
Right.
And there hadn't been since 2018, you know, so it took us 2 years to build it. So I always tell people, keep your full-time job as long as you can, because you don't know what you're going to need. But so we had to open.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point we could open. There weren't restrictions in Arizona anymore for opening. And until the day before we opened, and I remember this so clearly, I was sitting on the couch of one of my friends' at one of my friends' houses, and we were watching Governor Ducey give his updates, if you remember. He gave the COVID updates or whatever. And he shut down all bars in Arizona the day before we were ready to open. And so we were literally, our grand opening was the next day. And we were like, what do we do? What do we do? And at that point, like, I had maxed out all of my credit cards by then. There was no money left. And it was like, no, we have to open. And so breweries could open, tap rooms could open, because our primary purpose was the production of beer. And so restaurants could stay open and breweries could stay open. And so we opened the very next day. And it was super controversial. We had like all these protocols in place. We had hand sanitizer everywhere. You know, we had, it was chaos. But we had a line down the street, and we had people calling, being like, why are you open? And calling the police, being like, why are these people open? And so we had the police show up, literally asking us like that question.
Right. Right.
But we could open. It was a time that I never want to go back to.
For sure.
But it was hard. Yeah. And
it's a story you can tell. Is it like a story out of kind of like nostalgia, or is it like, are you still frustrated by that whole thing? How do you think about that now?
You know, I think it was traumatic. When I think back about it, it was like traumatic. I feel like so many people went through trauma during that time.
Yeah.
You know, it was just like, but it's definitely, I'm not upset about it anymore. I think now we're just, forward only.
Sure.
So to lighten the mood.
Yeah, let's get to happier times.
I was gonna say. So since then, obviously you guys have, people know about you, people rave about you. Tell us, give us some highlights of the last couple of years.
Yeah. So since that time, and the great thing is, we never had to close. We've been open. Our team is amazing. If you've met them, come in our tap room. They're so great. Our head brewer, Kristen Luparello, runs our beer program now. And then we've had a few assistant brewers now. Anthony Martin is our assistant brewer here, and they're thriving. It takes, no matter what, even with COVID or without COVID, you're in survival mode the first 2 years anyway. We're just getting to a point where we just hired a head of marketing. I just hired a taproom manager, within the last 6 months. And these are very critical people in a business, but you have to build up to be able to do that. And so you're in survival mode, but we have, what's been really exciting is all the beer that we've made, first of all, which has been surprisingly delicious from day one. We made our first beer that we made was a Kolsch. And it was like, we ended up turning it into a grapefruit Kolsch because it was summer and it was refreshing with grapefruit in it.
I've had it. It's really good.
Yeah, it became one of our most popular beers.
It's very good.
And I remember Kristen and I, like our first brew, we were, you just have no idea. It's all brand new equipment. We have this manifold that we built and we're like, we don't know if this works. We're not really sure how to use this equipment. This is the first time using it. And we tried the beer and we were like, oh my God, it's good. Like, we can drink it. It's actually beer. And I remember from then, from then on, brew days are the best days in here. When you have, it's just, when you have your brew day, you know that it's going to be a fun day. It's going to be, everybody's going to, it's not an easy day. It's still like you're still sweating, but it is like you're making the product that everybody's going to enjoy.
We've heard brew days are pretty long days, right?
They can be, yeah. I mean, our brew days are, the more you brew, obviously, like the more efficient it becomes.
Sure.
Today they brew in shorter times than I brewed my little 30-gallon in my garage. It took me 12 hours. Today they are brewing and cleaning and out of here in 8 to 9 hours. So they're pretty efficient. But yeah, I mean, we've been really lucky. Our team has been awesome.
Is there a beer that smells better on brew day than other beers? Like, I'm looking at the list, like the Kolsch or maybe a Goza or maybe coconut porter. Is there one that you like the aroma of more?
I can't. Okay, you're gonna think that I'm saying this just because I'm drinking it and I love this beer, but I do love the Her Story Day.
The pale ale gives also good. Yeah,
gives really. It's because the grain is we use pale malt. And we used to use Maris Otter, and so it's like biscuity, and it smells like kind of like bread.
Nice.
And I really like that smell. That's probably one of my favorites is the Her Story. When we brew the Her Story, you can kind of tell it's that day, even when you're outside.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, some of your flagships you've had here, you talked a lot about Her Story. Purpose Pilsner. I think I've seen that in cans at Total Wine.
Yeah.
Am I correct? In the Emera, and you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
I've had that one, picked that up at Total Wine. I was really pleasantly surprised when I saw it on the cans, because you figure you're so new. How are you in Total Wine? So I picked that up just because that was my first Greenwood beer, was that Emera hazy light. What's it? A light hazy IPA? Yeah. Is that what it is? Mm-hmm. Really, really nice and crushable. Drink that during the summer. Drink that.
Love that.
Like early in the afternoon. I really enjoyed that one a lot. And I noticed on your website, one of the ones that kind of stood out to me was the Sunny Mango Cream. Mm-hmm. That they say on your website, it says it's your wildest style. Why is that?
So Kristen and I'd say we both really like to we like to make traditional beer. And, she would tell you that she wants to go out and have a beer. She doesn't want to drink cereal. And so she, and I feel the same way. I like to drink. And so elevating traditional beer is really our goal. And so we typically don't add a lot of adjuncts to our beer, but there are times that we do. For example, the grapefruit Kolsch. I mean, the Kolsch was really delicious, and we were like, this would be so good with grapefruit. And at the time, I had figured out a way to add grapefruit well to a beer, and it was really, really yummy. And it turns out to be one of her most popular beers all year. Or like our blueberry wheat, we submitted that to the competition.
That's the one that tastes like a blueberry muffin, right?
It's pretty mild in blueberry.
Is it?
So it's beautiful beer. It's a wheat beer, and we add organic blueberry from Maine, and most of it is the puree, and then we add a little. I think she adds a little bit of like more of a concentrated version of the blueberry, but it's bright. It's really light. It's not like a blueberry flavor that's going to be artificial. It's
right,
very refreshing.
It's not colored blue, right?
No, it's pink.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it's pink.
It's pink.
Okay.
Yes. So if you open up the blueberry, it's pink flesh,
sure.
and it's a pink beer, but it's really refreshing and more light blueberry flavor. And so we do add that, but the mango is the weirdest beer that we make. It is kind of like a creamsicle. We add lactose to it. We add mango to it. So it's like, and then it's on nitro. So it's this mango creamsicle kind of beer.
Do you have it on tap right now?
We do have it on tap right now. Yeah, I know, you're empty. You need a beer.
That's my kind. To me, that's my kind. I love any beer with lactose in it, anything that's kind of weird and funky and different and interesting. Like I love traditional beers. I'll drink beer of any kind.
Yeah.
It's funny when I first started going to breweries, and the bartenders would ask like, what kind of beer do you like? I used to have a specific thing, and now when they ask me that, I'm like, I don't know what day of the week it is.
Yeah,
what time of day is it?
Am I eating food?
Is it December? Is it July? Am I eating? Like it's like the whole run of the things. But you tell me a mango creamsicle,
yeah.
And I'm like, I need to try that.
Sunny mango cream on nitro.
Sounds
There's not a lot of breweries that do one nitro and things like a sunny or a mango milkshake type one. So, and there's not a lot that do Belgian tripels either. And this is on all the time, right? This is the flagship.
It is.
Fantastic. Yeah. I've been searching for these more and more since I've been hanging out with Johan, and his kind of beer, he's getting me off the West Coast IPAs a little bit more. And this is fantastic. I know where to go for a good one now.
Thank you. So. Yeah. Well, so the Belgian Tripel, when I first started brewing, that was all I drank were Belgians.
Uh-huh.
So I'd go to King's and buy a bunch of Belgians, and we'd sit around at my house. I lived in Chandler. So we lived, and I'd sit with my friends and we'd try all these Belgians. And so that First Love is my first recipe that I made of a Belgian Tripel, and from homebrew days. So that came from homebrew, now brewed commercially. Kristen's put her spin on it a little bit. And so that beer is near and dear. That's why it's called First Love, because it was our first love.
I love that.
Was this Belgian Tripel. And so I totally am on your page. Right now I'm kind of, I don't know, having a baby. I feel like I'm all over the place with beer, but I feel like I'm more in the pales again. But the Belgians will always have a little piece of my heart there.
I definitely cycle through.
Yes.
It's kind of like music for me too. It's like I'll go through a phase or like a period of time where I'm really into hazies, and then I'll go and I'll want nothing but like Kolsch's and Hell's Lagers and all those like light crispy German beers, and then I'll do some Belgians for a bit, and then the winter will come around and I'm like nothing but barrel-aged monsters, and then it comes in cycles. So that's beer. That's what I love about beer. There's always something.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
That's the beauty. And people always ask us, how do we decide what we're going to make? And that's how you decide, what's in the air today, what's the season? What are people interested in?
Well, and I think that's how this different seasonal beers came around, right? Like when they were first brewing beer and they wanted to celebrate, the original Oktoberfest for what's his face's birthday or whatever, like that was his favorite kind of beer. So they brewed it for that. Now we call that an Oktoberfest beer.
Yeah.
And then, in the winter, you didn't want to maybe drink as refreshing beers. You wanted something that'll warm you up. And so you drank those like heavier, more, so it just like naturally all those beer styles fit into their season based on what beer drinkers like to drink.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. What I do love about a Belgian, though, is that I feel like it is all seasons.
It's perennial.
Yeah, it is. It's perennial. It is because like it's warm, it's 9.2. It's a warm beer. It's going to be high in alcohol. But then it's still really refreshing. And even the clove and banana that you get out of it is perfect for the summer. Yeah. So it's one of our most popular. It's just a stable beer same with the Her Story. It just it's like our base, it just stays. Yeah. But the Emra, I'm glad you said the Emra because that beer was that was a lot of the reason why I wanted to start Greenwood, was because at the time this was 2016. I was going to bars and restaurants and I was having a lot of my conversations with my employees or my customers over beer. So being an engineer, most of the people who I was a sales engineer. So I would design equipment and sell it to companies. And so I'd go and my customer was an engineer and most of them were men. And I come from the Midwest, so I'm a beer person by very early on in my life. Too early to tell, honestly. But so I was like, yeah, let's go have a beer. Let's have a beer and have a conversation about XYZ. And at the time I was like, I'd go out and even though I was home brewing and I had all this beer on tap, I had all this knowledge of beer and I would get stereotyped when I would go out we have this on tap, we have this blueberry wheat, whatever. Which I do love the blueberry wheat, don't get me wrong, but sometimes I do want the barrel-aged stout.
Right.
And so I was wondering if other women felt that way. And so I started doing some research on women in beer. And I Google searched women in beer. And the images that came up were either women in bikinis or women in lederhosen, which is so appropriate for this weekend. But that was all that I could find. There was not but then you searched men in beer and it was like all these men having a good conversation over craft beer. And I was like, I wonder why, why is it like that? And then I found that there was only 2% of breweries were owned by women in the whole country. And so when you're making beer, you're thinking about yourself as a consumer. And it's just natural that you think about that. So 78% of breweries are men owned, and then 20% of breweries are women and men owned, and then 2% are women owned. And so I was like, okay, so I found that out, and then I did some research on my own. So I surveyed 200 women to see what they liked, and then I found research from the Brewers Association that said that over 70% of women felt underrepresented. 70% of women beer drinkers felt underrepresented in the beer industry, and that they also felt like they weren't being marketed to. And so I was like, well, that's so easy. Beer is beer. There's no gender with beer, but women need to feel included just like men feel included. It's like men naturally, beer has always had this kind of masculine identity.
Sure.
But women love beer and are growing up with beer and are growing up with craft beer now, right? So when I was in college, I remember Sierra Nevada coming available in my bar. And I was like, what is this? What is this beer? And it was so gross to me at the time. I was like, this is so disgusting. What is this thing? Hops? What? And all these people were raving about Boston Beer Company, and Sam Adams, and people loved that beer. And but that was just becoming available. Call it the Midwest, whatever, my small ass town that had no, craft beer on tap. But that was just starting when I was in college. But now all these, 20 21-year-olds are growing up with craft beer readily available down the street, their local tavern, right?
Yep.
And so it was like, okay, so how do we create this business where we're also targeting women? We're targeting men, oh, of course, but we're also targeting women and making sure she's feeling included too. And so that Emra was one of the beers that came out of my survey of being a beer that women wanted. They wanted something that was easy drinking, low ABV, low calorie, but still really refreshing and juicy. And so we brewed that beer. But now it's so funny. My husband loves that beer. We have to have it in our fridge all the time. And men love that beer. And more men drink that beer than women in our tap room.
I'm telling you, I like a good, like a session IPA or something. I mean, guys kind of care about their figures every now and then too.
Yeah, totally.
If you're like me and you can't really grow a beard too, like I could kind of fit in maybe in a way that like the women feel, when they go into a brewery, like you're not like one of the bearded guys in the brewery.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a little bit different of a situation, but
I will say, I remember, because there's so many breweries, like you said, that are male owned, that you walk in, you feel like you just walked into like a garage.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of time that's the owner's like design choice and everything. But I distinctly remember going into your tap room for the first time and making a comment to my wife and being like, this feels very like Chip and Joanna Gaines, sort of like it's friendly. It's welcoming. Like you feel like you're walking into like a friend's living room, not like a friend's garage.
You should have this on the home and garden home tour or garden tour, right? Yeah.
But I remember like distinctly being like, this doesn't feel like a man cave. It feels like a place that everybody would like to come to.
Yeah.
And so it's cool that that's something that you put so much research and effort into creating, because that is distinctly what I remember thinking when I walked into your tap room, that it was like, everybody would like to be here. I mean,
for sure.
Even from like the font that you use for your signage and everything, like it's like,
and the colors and everything, and in the beer garden area. It
doesn't feel bro-y, And I think that's really cool that you were so intentional about that.
Yeah, thank you. Well, one of the questions we had on our survey for women was, what venue do you prefer to go to? And it was like, do you prefer to go to casual dining, fine dining, breweries, or anywhere with a good environment? And overwhelmingly, it was like 80% of the people said anywhere with a good environment. And if you ask women that today, she will say the same thing. She needs to feel comfortable to go into your establishment. So if you have a garage feel establishment, doesn't matter if it's a brewery or not, if it's dark and dingy and the bathrooms are kind of creepy, she's probably not going to go back again.
Right.
And so that's naturally in my head. But we hear that all the time from our customers. We get a lot of dates. We get a lot of first dates here because it's very easy. Men like to bring women here because it's a brewery.
And you have a beer called First Love. Maybe there's like a connection there.
Have there been a lot of have you followed up on that? Are there marriages that come out of first dates?
I think we've had a few relationships. I don't know about marriages yet, but we definitely have a few relationships that have come out of first dates here.
Very good. We'll have to feature that in the magazine in a couple of years. Families that have started here at Greenwood.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's a testament to it, though. Like you say that they want to go get a good beer, but they don't necessarily want to go to like a dive bar or something like that. Like This is the perfect spot for that. Because like you said, you walk in, it's like bright, it's welcoming, like it's just warm. Like it's very comfortable.
And it's not you're not dropping $500 at like a fancy steakhouse or something, Right. It's still a perfect first date, romantic kind of setting here where you don't have to totally impress the person on the right away.
What's a few beers? Probably you're leaving here with a $20 or $30 bill. That's pretty easy.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's funny. We do have a lot of first dates.
Talking about your neighborhood here, how have you seen Roosevelt Row come along over the years that you've been here now?
Yeah, so I moved to downtown in 2016, and at the time it was so that I could really starting Greenwood, and I wanted to find a space that I wanted to be in an environment personally that was going to grow my creativity. And I wasn't finding that in Chandler at the time. Since then, Chandler has blown up and has really cute stuff.
For sure.
But at the time, it was very family friendly. And I didn't have a family. I was a single woman at the time. And I moved to downtown. And it was perfect. It was a perfect timing to move downtown. At the time, I remember our parking lot was totally empty in my apartment complex. And there was maybe like 15 cars in it. And I didn't really think about it at the time that correlate, oh, that means that this apartment complex isn't even full, that there's not very many cars in the parking lot. And then when I left in 2019, the whole parking lot was full. All the entire ramp was full. And so between those 3 years, downtown just blew up, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And then my sister, who's also my head of sales, she moved. She is 8 years younger than me, and she was graduating college at the time that I was starting Greenwood, and she moved to Arizona. And I remember her and her friends were selecting downtown Phoenix as their place to live, moving from out of state, which I remember at the time was like, no one would have considered downtown Phoenix. Even 3 years ago, even 4 years.
I grew up in Phoenix. Like, no. When I was growing up, you didn't go. You didn't come down here.
Right.
Like, ever. And I remember being like, you're considering moving downtown as your first choice? There's something here. Yeah. There's definitely something here. And I thought that was so exciting. And even since then, downtown has grown, and there's a lot of controversy around downtown Phoenix growing because it's losing a little bit of its character of what it was. But the way that I see downtown is I see it as in its adolescent stage still. Arizona in general is still an adolescent. Let's be honest here. It's only our centennial was in 2012. So, we're still a very young state. And to the point of like, downtown didn't become a place you even went to until the last 5 years. And so it's super adolescent in that.
Yeah.
Like the culture of downtown is still being
old houses
established.
here were built in like the 70s,
Right. Yeah, exactly. Sorry.
Right. And I think even to your point, downtown used to be, in like the 50s and 60s was really popular. And then it kind of faded out. And in the 90s, it was like so dangerous to come down here. Right. And then, so now I see it as I really love what's happening. I think we need some fine dining downtown. So anybody that wants to open up fine dining, please do. We need some more shopping. But I think it's just on this trajectory that I think is so exciting. We had a hit during COVID. Our street especially had a hit. So Fifth Street, you used to walk up Fifth Street and it was lively. There was people everywhere. It's kind of like Rainy Street in Austin.
Yeah.
And it still is like Rainy Street in Austin. It looks just like it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But
I never thought about that, but that's so true.
It does. My friend sent me a Snapchat of Rainy Street and I'm like, are you across the street? I was like, this looks just like Fifth Street.
Yeah.
But so we have vacant business. We have vacant buildings still that are still lingering from COVID.
Yeah.
But I think that in even 5 years, there's going to be so many more people walking. It's going to be so lively. There are 30-story buildings, big apartment complexes, condos being built all over the place down here.
The kind of buildings where the dog park is on the roof. Those type of buildings.
Yeah.
And you guys get to be like central to all that, which I think that's so cool. I mean,
absolutely.
You're kind of an icon of Roosevelt now. So anything that grows around you, like you just get to be
there's a great beer call down here between Greenwood, Pedal House, Wilderness, the Theodore down there. Angel's Trumpet has been here, I don't know how long, for decades. But
Throne.
Yeah, Throne is a little bit down more towards Central. It's a walk down that way, but that's just got to be more benefit to come downtown Phoenix and help. That just helps you guys, right?
Of course. No, I totally agree. We need to do better. All of us business owners need to do better at formulating like an actual bar crawl. But I think
I know a magazine that might be able to help.
I know an events guide. No,
seriously, that would be awesome. Honestly, I was like, Brewery Row. Roosevelt Row, Brewery Row. Let's all put our marketing dollars and actually make this Brewery Row because it really is becoming that.
Yeah, Mesa is trying to develop that. Like Mesa is, they're like, we have all the breweries and the tap room. That sort of thing. But Roosevelt Row is right there with it.
I know. And then Safe Haven is opening right across our alley.
Oh, yeah.
So that's another brewery. So it literally just one stop to the next.
Love that.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's only collaborative. So we get a lot of people from the airport that come.
Yes.
Because we're one of the closest breweries to the airport.
Yeah, the guys from Grand Avenue were telling us that too.
Oh,
people
really?
just airport and they come right there, or they come here, right?
Yeah, and so this is their first stop.
Awesome.
A lot of the time when they get into town is like they're waiting for their Airbnb. This is a classic story. Like everybody comes in, they're waiting for their Airbnb. They're here for a bachelor party or bachelorette party, and they come to the brewery, and they're sitting there, and they come here because they see all these places that they can go, all these breweries, and visitors are already figuring that out. So we just need to promote it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to wait till that 4 o'clock check-in sometimes.
The unofficial start line of the Roosevelt Row beer tour.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, so you guys open at 11, so that is actually very good thinking on your part, because if you didn't open till like 2 or 3, they would just pass right over.
Yeah, it's true. I know I always go back and forth about the hours, and I just haven't changed them. That 11 o'clock, I'm just sticking to it.
Hey, 11 is a perfectly acceptable time to start drinking beer, in my opinion.
I was in a spot in Oceanside, California last week on vacation, and there was a coffee shop.
Good beer there?
That served beer. I won't mention all the beer that I drank there, but the one coffee shop, I go up there for coffee on a Sunday morning at 7 o'clock, and there's a guy just drinking beer on the tap room. Yeah. So some places do it earlier than you. I'm just saying.
True.
But they had coffee and breakfast sandwiches. And
so you go to Sip Coffee and Beer Garage, and same situation.
So here it's bring your own food, right?
Bring your own food.
Bring your own food. Have it on the beer garden area. Have it in the tap room. Mm-hmm. Really cool.
Sometimes you have food vendors outside.
Yeah, we also have QR codes on every table for our neighbors, so you can actually get food delivered right to your table.
Like the Il Bosco pizza,
and Tap That. AZ food, and then across the street ATL Wings just opened up. So all three of those.
They're so good.
Yeah.
What about Taco Cello?
Taco Cello is not on there yet.
Okay.
We're still working with them.
Okay.
Trap House is nearby, right?
Trap House is right across the street. Yep. So we get a lot of people who grab Trap House and come eat here because that space is a little small. And then, of course, you can have delicious beer with your barbecue, which there's no better combination than yummy barbecue and delicious beer.
So that was.
Have you had ATL Wings yet?
No, but my kid is trying to do that. So yeah.
Big fan.
So we actually had that in the magazine. That what local food or nearby food would you pair with your beer? Remind us.
I actually
what you said there.
Chula seafood.
Okay.
I really like Chula. At the time, I love Chula seafood. Have you been there?
They were at our Dish Fest in February, and I think that was the first time I'd ever had them. Yeah. And I still to this day remember it was a tuna melt, and you think of that word to me has always been kind of gross, a tuna melt when you think about it. Your Midwest roots, you think about tuna melts and like how good can it be, but that was the most fantastic thing I've ever had. I mean, it was so good, and I just kept going back to that table for more. And even though it was like right amount of heat and everything. I did.
Oh my
I tried.
gosh.
That's
Lucky.
That's the beauty of being the digital guy, because I can just be like, hey, let's put you on Instagram, and I
Everyone
shove my face.
Everyone keeps asking if I'm excited about putting on a beer festival, and I keep having to tell them, like, it's not like I'm going to be able to walk around and drink the whole time.
Right.
I'm going to be working and making sure all the drunkies don't get like hurt or anything. So
yeah, Chula's legit. They're that tuna melt, man. There's a reason why that's like best of the valley all the time.
Yes.
So you were saying is that still your choice?
I mean, if I'm gonna eat food in general, like if I'm gonna make myself some food, or if I'm gonna go out, I mean, beer and barbecue, is heavenly.
Yeah.
I'd say wings and beer, heavenly. Pizza and beer. You know, I feel like I like to consume my beverages with food a lot of the time. And so a good pairing I love. And so I think that people underestimate pairing beer with seafood. And we have the Purpose Pilsner, which I think is perfect with seafood.
Yeah.
And so the Chula seafood, I love their food, and then when I have it with a Pilsner, and there's not a lot of food you can pair with Pilsner that makes it really good. Like, it's really easy to pair a pale ale or an IPA with something really hearty and rich, and it's just like this beautiful combination.
Mm-hmm.
But seafood is so delicate and light that it's difficult to pair a good beer with. And our Pilsner, I think, is a really delicious pairing with their food.
That's awesome.
So
Very nice.
that's why I chose it. And at the time, I was loving their seafood.
Have you participated in any of those, like beer versus wine?
Yes,
Did you do one of those?
we did.
Okay. How'd it go?
Well, to our defense, the wine, it was a French dinner,
Okay.
and the wine was the owner's vineyard. But we actually did pretty well.
Yeah.
And we put the Belgian, there was pate, and we had the Belgian with the pate, and I thought that was delightful. And then we had lobster with the Pilsner, and I thought that was also delightful. And then the stout with the dessert was also delicious.
Yeah.
But
I think to your point, the food and beer pairing is this like completely underrated element, even in fine dining.
mm-hmm,
Everyone always goes to wine,
mm-hmm.
and I like wine. The differences between different styles of wine can be so subtle that if you don't have the palate for it, it's just not like, it doesn't feel accessible. Like if I have a steak with a cab or with a Pinot, like I'm sure
You don't know the difference.
I know there's a
right?
difference,
Yeah.
but I don't taste the difference. But if I have a steak with an IPA or a steak with a stout, which is actually not a bad combination, there's a very different experience you're having, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a much wider array of flavor profiles, in my opinion, for beer. Anywhere from a mango creamsicle, whatever it is, to a Pilsner or a stout or an IPA. Like, there's all these different things you can do with beer, whereas with wine, it's just so much more subtle. And I think, I did one of those beer versus wine, and every single one I was like, the beer's better. The beer's better.
It goes better.
It complemented the flavors better.
Mm-hmm.
So
I totally agree with you. And for a second, I need to plug our Rosemary IPA.
do it.
Because Rosemary
Sounds
IPA
like it's
with
perfect
steak
with steak. Yeah.
is amazing.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't actually realize this. So before we opened this location, and I was still doing these like pop-up events and stuff, I did a dinner with Cloth and Flame, and we had our Rosemary IPA with steak there, and it was the first time I had eaten a steak with our Rosemary IPA. Rosemary IPA is an old homebrew recipe too. So her story is our Pilsner, Rosemary, the Harvest. There's the Tripel. There's a few like that are kind of popped in there that are from old homebrew days. And the Rosemary was at the time we were brewing this one. We were brewing 30 gallons, so it was one barrel, but we were separating them into 4 carboys. So we'd have 4 carboys at the end. And so every time we would brew, we'd have a little bit different, we'd put something different in each carboy. So sometimes that was yeast to decide what's the best yeast to use in this beer. Sometimes it was the hops at the very end, like the dry hop. And then this time it was the garden series. And we added basil, thyme, rosemary, and I think like cilantro, lime, or something like that. I forget what the fourth one was. But the rosemary was so delicious. It was always on tap in my garage. I always had Rosemary IPA. I had the Her Story and the Rosemary IPA at all times.
Well, I was going to ask that. Is that so? It's named after the actual ingredient, the plant. Then.
It is,
and not like a person's name or something, right?
We've kind of like combined them. So we just canned that for the first time. We just launched it 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And
what is that, like a West Coast style IPA?
It is, yeah. It's actually super traditional. We use Centennial, Cascade, Amarillo hops. So super easy to find, very like standard, old, classic West Coast style hops. And then what really makes it shine is the rosemary. And that beer it was the first beer that I drank after having a baby. It was, it's one of my favorite beers that we have at Greenwood. And I'm so excited we have it in cans now because people have wanted that accessible. But to your point, Johan, we bottle that beer or we're starting to bottle that beer. And it's a 16-ounce bottle, beautiful. It's meant to not compete with wine, but be a second option to people in restaurants and fine dining that may not want wine. When I go to Mastro's, like
I just drink a Manhattan. I say neutral, so
Manhattans are delicious too. But when I go to Mastro's, it's always funny. Like I always feel bad for the server because when I go, I'm very specific about the food that I want, and I always drink beer and they want to sell me a bottle of wine, but I'm always drinking a beer when I go there. And I drink it with the lobster bisque, and it's so amazing and delicious. And but the beer, there's such an opportunity for somebody to come and present you with this beautiful beer that took, a lot of effort and love and delicacy to make it. We actually hand bottle all of our bottles here and present it just the way that you'd present a wine, and it could be a little bit more expensive at the restaurant. And then it's, locally made, hand bottled and everything.
That'd be great if they brought over like the keg, like they do the bottle of wine. Be like, how does this do you, sir? They present it to you. I need to see the cork on that, the bottle cap.
Right.
So I got a good question here because seeing you talk about having the Rosemary IPA, your first beer after pregnancy, your eyes lit up. So it's like a beer you're going to remember always, right? So I think guys come up with these things all the time, like. What are the top beers? Like a camping beer or like cleaning out the garage beer or a lawnmower beer or whatever. Where do you rank the post-pregnancy beer? How does that rank? Is that like a top 5 beer now to you?
For sure.
Yeah.
You just spent 9 months growing a baby and without having a full glass of beer. I mean, that's like top 5 of life.
Top 5,
I feel
yeah.
like.
Okay.
Yeah, especially being like our first baby. I own a brewery. I love beer. So
you just had to trust your staff that your beer was tasting fine for the last 9 months.
It's true.
We're going to have to update those lists that we see on social media all the time that people rank their, these are top 5 beers, like an airport beer. It's like that's the number 1 beer for a lot of people.
Airport beer at like 7 a.m.
Right.
Right? Because time has no meaning
in the
airport.
That's
so
right.
there's no rules.
A free beer ranks up there.
Yeah.
But now we know a post-pregnancy beer.
Yeah. That is absolutely
is up
true.
there.
Yeah.
There you go.
I mean,
that needs to be included.
I totally agree. And if you ask women, a lot of women crave beer during pregnancy.
Sure.
Because you're craving this like bubbly, light, bright drink. And women that don't drink a lot of beer crave beer during pregnancy. So
Really?
To have a beer after is just like, you've had a 9-month craving and you're fulfilling it.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
And it's one of the only cravings that you're like straight up not allowed to just
Indulge.
go for it. Yeah. Indulgence. So.
Well, I always think I'm like solving my craving when like candy bar milk stout comes out at Fade or something. And
you guys do anything like that? Like any crazy stouts or anything? Do you have any plans for stuff like that this winter?
We are doing a white stout this winter.
Ooh.
And that we're really excited about. That's
what's kind of like the flavor profile of that?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
We haven't brewed one. We haven't brewed it yet.
Okay.
So we're still developing the recipe, but
Love
we just
that.
went out to some of our customers to see if they like the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll be launching that. We've launched like a pecan porter in the past. But no, I'd say our stout is one of my favorite beers that to style that we have. So I think that
the Soul Oatmeal Stout, right?
The Soul Oatmeal Stout is, in my opinion, is one of the best beers we make that's truest to style. And it's a really, really delicious stout, I think. And it's very popular. So we kind of keep that beer at all times. It's our flagship now.
And that one's going to be pouring at Beer Fest.
Yeah, right?
Yes.
Next
Oh,
Saturday.
yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Any plans to ever do like a barrel program?
Yeah, there's not a lot of, so we have 972 square feet in this brewery. So it's smaller than some of your bedrooms in your homes, I'm sure. But we would love to, you know, so this brewery is built to be kind of for the pub, for the beer gardens and for our tap room. It's not necessarily meant for production, but we are production brewing out of here. So I come from production. So that is really where my mindset is in growth for Greenwood is when we were talking with Total Wine, when you said, Matt, that we were in Total Wine, you were surprised. So when we went and met with Total Wine, she, the woman who makes the decisions there, she was saying that, I am surprised. I hear this all the time. Breweries come in to me and they have this popular beer and they want to sell it in the market, and you don't have any idea how to sell it in the market, and you don't have any idea how to fulfill and maintain and make sure that your beer is staying on our shelves and all this stuff. And also production, because a lot of people overcommit. A lot of breweries will overcommit, and they will, and that's I'd say one of the biggest mistakes you can make is selling a product and then not being able to fulfill the order. But I come from manufacturing, so that's really where my bread and butter is in this brewery, is in the process, all the way to the sale, and making sure that we are fulfilling the orders and making sure that we're, supply chain is there and everything. And so when we talked to her about that, this is my background. This is our future, is having production, having our beer available in your fridge and we want you to come to our tap room, of course. We want you to drink our beer, but we're never going to be OSO where we have 10 locations and you're drinking our beer and having a restaurant. I love OSO. So I don't mean that in any wrongdoing. But that's just not our business model. Our business model is to have production beer so that you can enjoy it outside of our tap room too.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, we will need to probably grow out of this space. And I'm hoping that we actually are reaching our capacity by the end of next year, and where we will need more space. And so when that happens, hopefully a barrel program will happen.
Love that.
Exciting. In there, I know they submitted to the Arizona Craft Beer Awards that we judged a month ago.
Yep.
And we're going to announce those winners coming up on Friday night, October 21st, at a ceremony held by the Arizona Craft Brewers Guild.
Yeah.
And then the festival the next day on Saturday, October 22nd, out at Heritage at Sportsman Park, the Great Lawn State Farm Stadium. Johan's been setting that up behind the scenes. Greenwood is going to be there pouring, I think, 3 different beers.
Yep.
That Oatmeal Stout's one of them, and dozens of other breweries. What else can you tell us about that, Johan?
I think it's going to be a beer festival unlike others that we've seen in Arizona. The amount of seating, the amount of shaded seating, the VIP space is going to be really, really exceptional. No porta-johns, real bathrooms.
Inviting bathrooms, all
Real
Greenwood
bathrooms.
style.
Nice.
Yeah, very excited about that.
Bring your significant other. I mean, men and women both at this place. So.
And I think it's going to be a very comfortable beer festival. It's just going to be a good time, good food. We'll have barbecue there.
Yeah.
And seafood. Actually, look at that.
All of the
You sure
above.
you don't want to bring your Pilsner if you're not already?
It's almost like we scripted that.
I know,
for her
right?
to say.
Yeah, that's
There
funny.
will be seafood and barbecue.
Yeah. So, it's going to be a great time. We're very excited. A week from tomorrow, I don't know when you're releasing this episode, but my sleepless nights have already begun, so this beer was very much needed.
Yeah.
Today.
Do Johan
There
a
we go.
favor so he can sleep. Go on to
Yeah.
azcraftbeer.com, buy a ticket so Johan can sleep at night.
Yeah. Easy craft beer.
Megan was telling us before we started recording, she's super excited that competition has come back. Why is that?
I have been asking for Arizona competitions since we became part of the Brewers Guild. And, as a small brewery, it's so important to get feedback. And we get feedback from our customers, but we don't get judging feedback unless we go to national competitions. And national competitions are great, but they are very expensive for a small brewery.
Right.
Very expensive to submit. It's multiple hundreds of dollars to submit, and then you have to ship and get your beer there. And half the time you don't actually know if it's your beer, the style, or if it's the actual packaging. Maybe something happened in packaging, or maybe your packaging isn't as good when it travels across states to get to the next, to 3 states over. And so for us to have a local competition where we can get feedback on our styles of beer, is so important for us to continue to improve. And so I'm so excited that we're getting some feedback about and being able to compete with our Arizona breweries. It's also great for our publicity, for people to know who we are. When you go to GAB at Great American Beer Festival, and if you get an award, it's a huge deal. But it's also really, really hard to get one. So people don't know you're submitting a beer with sometimes 2,000 other entries.
Yeah.
Of breweries across the country that are 40-year breweries. So your competition is very, very high. Whereas for us to be able to compete locally and just see how we do across, how does our beer taste to judges, and getting that kind of feedback is just, it's awesome.
Well,
I'm
I think
happy.
the other awesome thing about it, and we were talking about this earlier, is that we're providing all this feedback to brewers here locally that they can then take back and say, okay, maybe this beer was missing this piece of the style guideline that it's that we wanted to fit into. So let's tweak some things. Let's tweak our recipes a little bit. And then the next year they submit that beer into a national competition like GABF, and it does better.
Right.
And maybe it wins at something that it didn't win before because it didn't get the feedback. And,
Right.
and you're right. I mean, when you have a category like hazy IPAs at GABF that has 500-600 entries just into that
You
style,
get lost in the shuffle.
you get lost in the shuffle. Whereas, obviously we're going to grow, but we had 150 beers submitted total. So every beer got a lot of attention.
Yeah.
And we were very specific about telling the judges, provide actual feedback, actionable feedback, right?
Yeah.
So that it's not just yay or not enough carbonation, or just something kind of give something a little bit more, so that, and we hope to continue that culture throughout year after year, that you submit a beer into the ACBA, you're gonna get something back.
We had real serious judges too. I mean, I was a part of it, and I'm very amateur. I've never judged beer, but the guy sitting next to me was described to me as the top beer judge in the entire country. So that was very exciting.
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, we had the president of the BJCP there.
We had all kinds of home brewers.
Yeah, I mean,
we
it
had
was
different professional brewers. It was a really, really good, solid mix.
a couple of chefs
Wow.
who have a different kind of palate, but
Yeah.
still very, very well developed palate. So it was a great experience. Matt was telling me earlier today that the first year of GABF, they had
it was 20 breweries and like 80
at the
beers
festival
or
and
something.
80.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
So we have 150 submitted into the awards. We have about 28 breweries participating in the festival. So we're already ahead of GABF on year one. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
That's right. Gotta start somewhere.
Love that.
Gotta start somewhere.
So no, we're very excited. And we're excited to hear that the local brewers are just as excited. We really want this to be something that elevates the Arizona beer community as a whole.
Absolutely. It only will. I think you were saying earlier, Johan, that it will, once we knowing, getting feedback and being able to develop our beer better is only going to make all of us better.
Yeah.
High tide raises all ships or
Yeah.
something. That's, I think I was saying, or something. Same thing. We are together. Arizona needs to represent better, I think, at these awards.
Yeah.
And so having something local to at least understand what is our best beer.
Yeah.
We don't even know that
Sure.
ourselves.
Sure.
So being able to just at least have some of that feedback and know how to fix it, know how to fix and make our beer better is so important.
Yeah.
So
It's awesome.
I'm so happy you are doing this. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
It's our pleasure to put it on, and
Yeah.
check out more on Greenwood in the latest issue of Phoenix Magazine.
Yep.
Their beer is actually on the cover.
Yeah,
I think our editor had to take off the Greenwood logo, but that is a Greenwood
We didn't
beer.
want to show too much
on-
favoritism. Right?
And it's your bartender's hand on the cover too.
Yeah, it's our taproom manager, Christian. He's famous.
Is he
It's his
signing
hand.
copies at
Yeah,
all?
he
Yeah.
sure is. Yep. Signing copies, yeah. And that's our Rosemary IPA right on the front cover. We are competing with that, I think.
That is a
Friday.
beautiful looking beer, beautiful cover, and we thank Greenwood for joining us on this episode and introducing me to some of their new styles or some of their
I'm gonna go
existing styles
drink
that I
that
just haven't tried.
mango thing. I'm very excited about
There
it.
you go,
Sunny mango.
Johan's going to get into a new beer he hasn't tried, and that's what this is all about. We love new beers. We love meeting new people. Megan, thank you for having us.
Thank you for coming.